the Bauhaus meant something to everybody. See, the myth was already spread around that if it was Bauhaus, it must be either good or bad, depending on what your opinion was.
Ja, am Bauhaus verdichteten sich tatsächlich viele Avantgarde-Ideen, viele auch revolutionäre Ideen der 20er Jahre. Es gab einfach in ganz Europa keine Kunsthochschule, die so komprimiert die Neuerungen tatsächlich in die Praxis überführt haben.
Etwas ganz anderes bewirkt als alle Kunstschulen und alle technischen Hochschulen. Es hat nach einem Weg gesucht, wie man mit dem Leben ästhetisch fertig wird.
The Bauhaus was the greatest design institution of the 20th century, without a doubt. It's affected everything. Our cities on a huge scale turned them into rather mechanical machines. And it's turned our interiors into rather nice, simplified, kitchen-like instruments.
Die Kontribution des Bauhauses bestand darin, dass wir, was ich nennen möchte, eine optische Wissenschaft sammelten.
Born out of catastrophe, the new world it helped to shape came painfully into being some 3/4 of a century ago, even as the old world was collapsing. The Bauhaus was the idea of Walter Gropius, a German architect who, while serving as an officer in the Great War, dreamed about a school of art and design that would help change the world. The nightmare of war, the mechanized slaughter, made Gropius long for a world in which the machine would be tamed for the benefit of man.
Well, I still remember when I came out of the First World War, and there was one moment in my life which I do not forget, but all of a sudden I became aware that I would have to take part in something completely new which would change the conditions I had been living in before. When I think of the beginning of my life, there have been utopian ideas and nobody thought that they might become reality, but they have become reality today.
After the war, Gropius began to make his utopian dream come true. He was asked to found an art school and expressed his revolutionary ideas in a manifesto published early in 1919. The school would be called the Bauhaus, Building House, and the manifesto was illustrated by a dramatic woodcut of a Gothic cathedral, its spire soaring up towards the starry sky. The ultimate aim of all creative activity is the building. We must all return to the crafts. The school is the servant of the workshops and will one day be absorbed by them. Let us together create the new building of the future, which will one day rise towards the heavens as the crystalline symbol of a new and coming faith. Gropius was not alone in his utopian aspirations. His school was supported by public funds. The Bauhaus was founded in the old city of Weimar, where the new German constitution was also devised. While the Bauhaus began work, the politicians debated in a theatre half a mile away. They met there because Weimar was less troubled by rioting than Berlin, and because Weimar, once the home of the writers Goethe and Schiller, was regarded as the cultural heart of the nation. In these two buildings, a revolution in art education took place. It was a revolution which gave us the method of workshop-based training used in many schools of art and craft today.
Und dann war mir klar, dass eine größere Verbindung zwischen den neuen Produktionswaffen, den Maschinen und dem künstlerischen Menschen hergestellt werden müsste. Und folgedessen habe ich Werkstätten errichtet, in denen die Leute von zwei Seiten erzogen wurden. Einmal vom Künstlerischen und vom anderen vom Handwerklichen. Es ist oft missverstanden worden, dass das auf Handwerk aufgebaut war. Das war aber eine Zelle der Vorbereitung. Man kann nicht eine Maschine verstehen, bevor man nicht die Handwerkszeuge verstanden hat.
So the backbone of the Bauhaus in Weimar was its workshops, where the students, known as apprentices, acquired their skills not by designing on paper, but by actually making things. Chairs and other types of furniture in wood, for example, bookbindings, stained glass, implements in glass and metal, fabrics or ceramics. A major innovation at the Bauhaus was that craft skills were taught by master craftsmen, while aesthetic inspiration came from art.
And the painters of the modern time had done some constructive thinking. They had developed a certain philosophy as to artistic space and colors and form. So I thought, though the final aim of the Bauhaus for me was architecture, that the painters might be able to bring in really the beginning of a new constructive thought. And they have shown that it was so. We have to pull the whole thing together. We have to destroy these separations between painting and sculpture and architecture and design and so on. It is all one.
Gropius didn't employ just any artists in his search for teachers who could think constructively. There was Vasily Kandinsky too, the Russian who, before the Great War, had virtually invented abstract painting. He was now developing a visual language consisting of triangles, circles and squares, expressive textures and dynamically moving lines. Kandinsky's compositions made no reference to nature. They were shaped by the way he felt. Another painter who taught at the Bauhaus was Johannes Itten, a metaphysical dreamer who was responsible for one of the many innovations which made the Bauhaus such a remarkable school. This was the compulsory foundation course, to which Klee and Kandinsky also contributed.
Johannes Itten's foundation course was the basic unifying factor in the Bauhaus for its entire period. Johannes Itten was there for 3 years, and he was the one to invent this method of teaching, where he would start off with breathing exercises, with intense introspection, with a kind of Buddhist-like calm, which he learned actually from Buddhism.
Itten was also a disciple of Mazdaznan, a variety of Zoroastrianism, in whose service he shaved his head and wore monkish robes, even while teaching.
Well, Bauhaus was the first time in art and design education that the emphasis had been put on the individual student, the student's emotions and senses and intellect. And it was also the first time that design had been taught in a coherent way within an art context. A student would arrive and enroll for the preliminary course, and instead of previous preliminary courses, which had been all about the history of art and learning about the solutions of past ages, you went straight into abstract forms. You learnt about materials and their textures. You learnt about colour theory. So it was a kind of grammar that you learnt for 6 months to find out about your individuality and which direction will you go. That was the basic structure of the course.
In drawing as well as in three-dimensional design, a great stress was laid on texture. We had to imitate texture of wood, of glass, of wool, of anything we found interesting in contrast to other textures. And also, we were asked to build up three-dimensional structures of various materials.
The Bauhaus invented the modern art student. I mean, up until the Bauhaus, art students were rather conformist characters who sat in serried ranks, all doing the same thing, all rather middle-class people doing watercolours and copies of antique sculptures and so on. And from the word go, the Bauhaus attracted a certain kind of rather politically...
Opened the school in Weimar. He said that he wanted everyone who applied to have a chance to get in. He said there was to be no deference to ladies. As far as work is concerned, we are all craftsmen. One of the problems, of course, was that many, many women applied. Far too many as far as he was concerned. So after a year he had to begin to segregate them and put them into various workshops because he felt that metalwork and furniture was too difficult for women to be doing. So they were directed into the pottery workshop and into the bookbinding workshop and into the weaving workshop, which means, of course, they are stereotyped to a certain extent into doing what was considered to be women's work. Weaving is women's work. And obviously art can move into textile design and weaving more comfortably, perhaps, than more formal preoccupations. So that in the early years, the designers in textiles are producing these magnificent weaves, tapestries, which are there to be hung on walls.
One of the most brilliant women students, Marianne Brandt, wasn't a weaver, however. A member of the metal workshop, she made some extraordinarily beautiful household utensils in copper and other materials. By the time Brandt was producing her characteristically refined and functional objects, the Bauhaus workshops had begun to move away from individually crafted pieces towards products made as prototypes with later industrial manufacture and a mass market in mind. Elegant, simple pieces are the forerunners of what today passes in every home for good, thoroughly modern design. Then they seemed startlingly plain. Everyday objects like tea infusers were designed in terms of their function and the need for mass production. Some products were already being manufactured in series by the Bauhaus workshops. A chess set with pieces signalling the way they moved across the board sold well. A cradle consisting only of triangles, circles and rectangles in the primary colours remained unique. A range of wooden toys made up of separate, brightly coloured elements is still on sale today. The design of many of these products was closely linked to foundation course teaching, in which there was an emphasis on colour and geometry. In the foundation course, attempts were made to subject form and colour to scientific laws. Kandinsky taught that the primary forms, the circle, the square, the triangle, represent and convey qualities identical to those inherent in the primary colours, blue, red and yellow. Primary colours and shapes also inspired the productions of the Bauhaus theatre workshop. Theatre was central to Bauhaus teaching because it provided a way of bringing several artistic forms into an intimate and expressive unity. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy was a Hungarian constructivist and the master of many media. He took over the foundation course in 1923, sweeping away Itten's metaphysics and mysticism, replacing them with the mystique of the machine.
Molinari was an extremely lively personality. He was almost childlike in his interest that everything new which came up in techniques and so on electrified him. He went right after that. He was an experimental fellow. He tried everything out himself. He was perhaps the closest friend of mine in the Bauhaus, and we influenced each other quite a bit. Molinari was understanding what was going on in the economy and in the industrial life of the modern time, and tried to build his ideas into that.
The new foundation course was also taught by Joseph Albers, who came to the Bauhaus as a student in 1919 and became the first graduate to teach there.
Wenn ich aus einem Material etwas herstelle, dann sollte ich die Kräfte, die in dem Material sind, auch benutzen und nicht zudecken. Also dieses in dem Material denken war sein Ziel. Und er stellte Aufgaben, die etwa so lauteten wie mit dem großen Stück Packpapier, das etwa ein Yard groß ist, aus dem man Raum herstellen musste. Man konnte es falten, man konnte es schneiden, also alles das tun, was man sagt. Wir entdeckten dann, dass man es senkrecht belasten kann. Wir haben Faltungen gemacht, worauf ein Mann stehen konnte. Aber alles zusammen gesehen ist der Albers ein Mensch, der systematisch den jungen Leuten die Verrücktigkeit des Künstlers austreibt und ihn zum vernünftigen, deutlichen Denken bringt.
The paper constructions made under Albers' supervision trained the students to think not so much like artists as engineers. In 1923, the Bauhaus finally went public. The local government demanded to see what was being done with taxpayers' money, so it was agreed to mount an exhibition.
Die Ausstellung von 1923 hatte einen doppelten Charakter. Einmal stellte sie die Arbeitsergebnisse der ersten Jahre der Schule in sehr wirkungsvoller Form dar in Weimar. Es brachte sehr viel nationale Aufmerksamkeit, ja sogar auch einige internationale Aufmerksamkeit nach Weimar. Zugleich aber machte diese Ausstellung schon die Wende von dem eher expressionistischen frühen Bauhaus zum konstruktivistischen späteren Bauhaus deutlich.
The most important feature of the exhibition was a house built on a hill overlooking the Weimar Park on a street called Am Horn. The site was on a field used to grow fruit and vegetables for the Bauhaus canteen. The house was constructed from prefabricated parts and furnished entirely by the Bauhaus workshops. It was ecologically sound, cheap to build and easy to run. The Haus am Horn gave a shape to dreams about a better world.
The Haus am Horn was an experimental house built with the purpose to be so economic in price that a skilled worker in Germany would be able to afford it, with all the mod cons included, like central heating and bathroom. This was, of course, one of our ideals. We wanted to penetrate into the mass market because we thought once our things are economically priced for the man in the street and, let's say, available to be bought in shops like Woolworths, then, of course, we will succeed in changing the environment. And that we felt would be
also changing man towards a better being.
They designed a kitchen which is a laboratory for cooking. They are using ceramics and glass that's been designed in the workshops, and it's not a sort of kitchen living room which most medium-class houses intended to have, or a kitchen in which the servants would work, which is totally segregated from the rest of the house. It's part of the unit of the house, but at the same time it's laid out along rational principles. In these kitchens, they had everything, the storage, the layout, to produce an efficient centre of the household.